Okay, so it's 8:02 a.m. and this is a part two. Well, I don't even really want to say a part two. I want to say a remake of why 700,000 plus kids go missing every year. I already know that most Americans don't believe that sex trafficking really exists and they think that everything's a conspiracy. And of course, due to the fact that the mental labels were made for what they were, when victims do come out, the ones that are able to escape, because the thing is, to get out, you have to get yourself out because there's no system put in place to help anybody. And not to mention the fact that with the fact that the people who are doing the global SR sex trafficking are doing it, there's nobody that can really confront them about it because they can just pay their way out, or either they work with law enforcement or whatever. And I mean, even with the little minor parts of the cash for kids system, like the mental health system, nobody does anything. So of course nobody's gonna do anything with the bigger parts. Or even, I mean, there's other parts of the cash for kids system, like the entertainment part. So that'd be shows like Beyond Scared Straight and Dr. Phil and all that. Those are shown on live TV in front of everybody. No one does anything but laugh those situations off. So I mean, most people are either too scared or too brainwashed to do anything about really anything that goes on around them. So, yeah, anywho, there's something else I was supposed to say, but now I don't even remember. So, it's like my usual videos. Okay, so number one, delaying low till 18 to escape it. Oh, yeah, wait a minute. I remember what I was going to say now. And it's like the people who do know about sex trafficking and actually know that it actually happens, that and the other types of trafficking that go on. Well, mostly just the sex trafficking one. It's like they want to try to lump every missing kid into the trafficking category when that's really not that true. And the thing is, a lot of people who are in trafficking were born into it. Then as far as the prostitution, sex trafficking, most people in there who weren't kidnapped, they kind of like, they got themselves in that predicament because for one, people that go into prostitution have already been sexually abused, so they already have the low self-esteem and their sexual issues to even fall into that, and then they think that that's the only way to make money or the easiest way. Of course, people who are homeless and don't have vital records are going to commonly fall into that if they're too young to work a job, like with the Guadalajara meth addict dude who had a prostitute at 7, which I talk about that like near the end of the video, where I was combating Nick Johnson's lie that all homeless people are on drugs. But of course, plenty of people get into prostitution who aren't homeless. It's usually kids who are in a bad situation, and then they have to like either prostitute physically or over the internet. And of course, the kid victims get charged with child sexual abuse imagery, which that's what I like to call it, but the law calls it CP. And I already have a video about that I made a while ago. But anyway, people try to lump all the missing kids into global SRE sex trafficking, but that's really not even the case. And everybody's not going into that. There's plenty of people who get talked junk about on a daily who are homeless, and they've been homeless since they were kids or teens because they had to leave a bad situation or they had to leave trafficking. So it wasn't just like an abuse situation with relatives. So anyway, number one, laying low till 18, escape abuse in a home or foster care. So basically, like I've said before, and even like my current situation, there's a lot of people who have to leave abuse situations under 18 because, for one, there is no system put in place to help people under 18, and there is no system put in place to help really anybody in general except perpetrators. So the people who are able to accept the fact that there is no system put in place to help, and that CPS not only doesn't care, but CPS is just another part of the Cash for Kids system and their child trafficking organization. And I'm not even talking about the stuff that people say about CPS sex trafficking kids, which that does happen, whether they end up getting into the global SRA sex trafficking or they end up having a prostitute to make money because CPS won't give them their basic needs. Or if the kids end up running away and then getting dragged into trafficking. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just saying just the stuff that CPS and the other branches of the Cash for Kids system does on a daily is trafficking, but people don't like to admit that. Taking a kid from one place to another state, to another foster home, and all this without their permission is trafficking. And the mental health system and all the other parts of the Cash for Kids system do it too. Just like with the juvenile justice, they take them from wherever they're at and then they lock them up in different places. TTIs, sometimes they sometimes they have professional kidnappers that come to the kid's house at 12 a.m. and kidnap the kid in the middle of the night and take them to the ranches in the middle of nowhere, and they stage it to make the kid think that they actually are being kidnapped, and then they end up in a TTI that they don't even know their parents got them put in. But anywho, so some people are able to get their vital records like I talked about in the homeless video, and some people aren't. The ones that aren't either have to get into a program to get their vital records or they end up stuck homeless. Because the thing is, even if they don't want a house, they're not going to be able to work a job either without vital records. And then for the ones that do get their vital records, they're able to get a job and all that, but I mean, they commonly end up still homeless well into their 20s, but they still do work. Because, I mean, of course, with how expensive things are, especially depending on what state they live in, they're not going to be able to afford to live anywhere by themselves anyway. So, what was the other thing? Hold up. Oh, yeah. So there was this one story that I heard from this one person who was, like, in their like, mid to late 20s. And so, basically, she said that she had to run away under 18. And one day, she got a call from the Center for of Missing and Exploited Children, and they asked her if anybody ever found her, and she said no. So a lot of people do end up surviving, and they're not all getting kidnapped. Not that I want to try to downplay it, but I do want people to stop acting like there aren't people that are still out here and do want help that have to survive till 18 and lay low till 18, because I don't know how to explain what I was about to say, but I just want people to know that it's not always the case. And I mean, there's also other types of trafficking. There's some people that get kidnapped in a labor trafficking and they have to sell products door to door and stuff like that, or they have to work on these slave farms. And so I don't think I have anything else to say about that, or do I? Oh yeah, there was this one video. If I can find it, I'll link it in the description. But there was this lady who was in like her late 20s, and she was talking about how she had been homeless, living in forests and stuff ever since she was 13. And then people in the comments were saying the world's richest country and all that stuff, and talking about how much money America has and how they could help. But the thing is, none of this is about money, and that's something that a lot of people have to realize when it comes to the agendas being pushed and all of the different abuse systems, and just how child abuse is an agenda, not a coincidence. And people think that it's about money, but really it's not about that. The whole point is to mess up a whole bunch of people and brainwash them through trauma, which a lot of people will call trauma-based mind control. They brainwash them with the trauma, like basically they gaslight people into going insane or killing themselves, but usually going insane. And then it's just to create a world of messed up people. That's really the whole goal. And that's why trauma is so normalized and why healing isn't normalized. And then when people do talk about trauma or any of that stuff, they commonly get what's the word? Verbally assaulted by people who say everybody's trying to be so soft and weak these days and talking about how they're traumatized. The thing is people have been talking about it, but the majority of the public didn't really want people to talk about it, and they wanted people to act like they weren't traumatized and just try to go on with their life. And so it's good that some people are talking about it now, but still overall trauma symptoms are normalized. Being gender confused is normalized. All of that stuff is normalized. And then when people are in these abuse situations where they're being brainwashed into becoming like a really bad person, then once they do commit whatever crime that they're being brainwashed into committing, and they become one of those famous serial killers or whatever, they're romanticized by the public, and they basically become like some type of marketing scheme, because then they have life-size animatronics of the person that they sell, and there's a whole bunch of Netflix documentaries that the victims don't even agree to, and it's like they romanticize the killers, and there's a lot of stuff with that, but basically the point is it's all an agenda to create a world of messed up people. That's really what it's all about. It's really, really deep actually, and overall it doesn't really have anything to do with money, because there's other ways that money could be made that don't revolve around child abuse and messing people up and gaslighting people and brainwashing people. There's a lot of other ways money could be made. So anyway, 2, kidnapped by crazy ladies who want kids. So a lot of people may not really know about this, but there's some crazy ladies out here who really want kids. And so whenever they see a kid who's in a bad predicament, they'll try to like manipulate the kid and feeling bad for them, and they'll be like, I don't have any kids and I always wanted kids, or I always wanted a daughter, or I always wanted a son, and I have an extra room in my house, stuff like that. And then they end up trapped in some lady's house for the rest of their life or whatever, while she's basically trying to re-raise them or raise them depending on how young they are. And these are the same women that will go to hospitals and kidnap newborns. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that one. 3, global SRA sex trafficking. Many are born in through CPS, or they're just born into a family that does it in general. So I kind of already talked about that. Some people are kidnapped in, but a lot of people are born into it. So you're never going to hear about them. I mean, really what I said a while back is that when people are going through global sex trafficking, you're not going to hear about them anyway. And then for the people that are going through prostitution sex trafficking, it's like they commonly get thrown in jail anyway. And because prostitution is illegal, but of course they're not agreeing to, but the police throw them in jail anyway because they don't really care. And of course, the perpetrators are the ones who the laws are there to protect, because like I've said a lot throughout the years, the laws are made by child molesters. So, I mean, these people don't go to jail. Perpetrators are the people that are being protected in every situation, really. That's why there was a teenager who killed her sex trafficker, and of course she went to jail. And that's the thing. When you get out of global SRA sex trafficking, not only do you have to lay low, but commonly you have to kill somebody to get out of there. And so not only are you have to lay low, because they're going to want to kill you because they don't want you to expose the secrets, and they're going to want to put you in jail because you killed one of the people. one of the people that were doing it or involved in it or whatever. And so, wait a minute. Okay, 4. I talked about this in the last video I made about this, and I'm probably gonna end up deleting because I really didn't like how that came out. Kidnapped by CPS when found homeless far from home. So there are situations where somebody will report a kid who's either really young or maybe they just don't want to say who they actually are, but usually they're really young. And so CPS comes and gets the kid, and nobody knows how old the kid really is. Nobody knows their actual name or where they came from. And so this kid ends up in the foster care system. And these are commonly the people that you'll see claim to be a person that they're not because they think, okay, wait a minute. I have to explain it a lot better than this. So sometimes there's like cases where a kid goes missing. If I can find a video about one, I'll put in the description. And so the family is like getting on the news or whatever about how they're still looking for the kid or the case will open back up or whatever. And so different people will call in saying they think they might be the missing kid. And of course, a lot of the times, a lot of the people aren't the kid. But it's because there's a lot of people who get basically kidnapped by CPS and they don't really know who they are or where they came from. And so I guess that's a good little explanation of that. And so, okay, wait a minute. Which one am I on? 1, 2, 3. Okay, 5, prostitution, sex trafficking. So it's kind of a similar explanation to the global SRE sex trafficking, except global SRE sex trafficking actually consists of a lot more stuff than prostitution, sex trafficking, because prostitution, sex trafficking would be trafficking that specifically is about prostitution and sex. Global SRE sex trafficking actually has a lot of stuff with it, and it more so revolves around kids, like actual kids and babies. And there's really a lot of stuff with that. These are like the people who you'll hear come out about how they were locked in some rich person's basement who was abusing them or whatever. And then, of course, they always get labeled off as schizophrenic and crazy. And at the end of the day, like I've said before multiple times, mental illness comes from trauma and abuse anyway. So it wouldn't really make a difference if they were schizophrenic, but for whatever reason, it's always used as some cover-up term. So anytime somebody is talking about things that people don't want them to talk about, they're labeled off as schizophrenic. If anything, the people more likely have DID, but I mean, it's kind of similar. And like I've also said before, all mental illness is just different forms of double-mindedness. But anywho, prostitution, sex trafficking commonly happens when a kid or even an adult has to, or at least they feel like their only way to make money is by prostituting themselves. Because either they're too young to get a job, they don't have vital records, or their self-esteem and everything is so low and they already are messed up from sexual abuse to where they just don't see any other option, or they don't really think that it's not an okay thing, because there's some people that really just don't see the risk with this or any of that. And that's what really a lot of things, because there's like points in trauma where somebody has to like kind of gaslight themselves into thinking that what's going on is okay to get through it. And those are the people that will commonly end up doing it to somebody else, but that's a whole nother story. So anyway, then 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, labor trafficking. So labor trafficking is when really adults or kids, but commonly kids, or well, at least in the situations I'm talking about, which revolve around kids, they're kidnapped and then they're forced to sell stuff door to door, or they're forced to do some type of work in some factory. And what else? They can be forced to work for some rich company or some rich person, and sew their clothes or whatever. So that's that. 7, being passed around the juvenile justice system. So there's situations where homeless kids, and really homeless people in general, but that's another story, or the police really hate homeless people. So like they'll arrest the kid for no reason, and then they'll give them charges, and then the kid will be just in and out of jail for no reason, and then they'll be in jail for some years and get out, then they'll try to put them back in jail. And it's been issues before in different situations with kids being put in jail without their parents' permission, and then being taken downtown without their parents' permission, and the parents don't even know that it happened and stuff like that. And that's why I think at least some states made a law where they have to call the parents or something like that. So there's that. And then 8, escaping trafficking. They're born or kidnapped into. Traffickers do report victims missing sometimes, and they get mental labels put on them. I already have videos about how psychiatrists help sex traffickers, so I'm not even going to go into that. But as far as the traffickers reporting victims missing, so when people are born into it, there's the situations where the person's born into it just for whatever ritual, just to be trafficked and sexually abused by people who were like paying to do it, or who are just in whatever group that's doing it or whatever in the world, so they won't have vital records, and they won't even, well, no, if it's just for ritual, then they're probably not going to get the person vital records, if they're going to kill the person at least, because there's a lot of situations where they kill the kids, or even just after the kid gets a STD, they'll kill the kid, and there's a lot of different stuff that they'll do to kill them. But if they're born into it, they either don't have vital records because they're just going to kill the kid eventually, and that was already like kind of the whole person of getting whatever kid or lady pregnant so they could kill the kid, or they do have vital records, because commonly these people go to school, they go to the doctor and all of that. So a lot of people think that all the sex trafficking stuff is just some secretive, it's just a whole bunch of secretive stuff, when really that's not even that true. It's really not. The real thing is that the public won't do anything about anything, so that's why things happen that shouldn't be happening, because nobody would do anything about jack. It's really not even as deep as people try to make it seem. Like, it's really not that secretive, because the thing is, when the kids do come out about what's happened to them, the public just calls them crazy and all that, or says that they want attention. So it's like, there really doesn't have to be a secret, because nobody really cares. Or at least the public doesn't, the general public. So anyway, then the third thing they do is that they can just make vital records. So they'll kidnap kids, and they'll make vital records. They'll give them another name to put on the fake birth certificate and all that. And so if the kid runs, they can just report them missing and claim it is their kid, or that they adopted them, or whatever in the world. So some people are escaping that type of trafficking, or just the little well, I mean, I don't want to say little, like it's not that serious, but I mean, compared to global SRA sex trafficking, the lot worse stuff goes on there. But anyway, it could just be the prostitution sex trafficking, because there's plenty of kids who run away from home because their parents are prostituting them, and so they get reported missing, and they also fall under the laying low till 18 category, which was the first thing I talked about. And so then the next thing, the kid was scooped up into a youth homeless help project ran by rich sex traffickers. So there's some situations where they're claiming that they're helping homeless youth, but really they're trafficking them or prostituting them or whatever. So this would kind of be like the homeless kid or youth job programs where they claim that they're helping, giving them jobs, and they end up trafficking everybody. Or kind of like with the McDonald's houses, because I heard some stories about the McDonald's house that people were coming out and saying, but of course all that got covered up really quickly and then nobody ever talked about it again. So I don't even remember what all was going on, but I do know that some people were saying that they got trafficked. And that's all I really remember about that situation, because it was a long time ago for one. I think the McDonald's house thing was like in the 2010s, and then it got covered up so quickly. So this could be homeless kids shelters, which the U.S. really doesn't even have a lot of shelters for people under 18 because of how the laws are set up to try to like trap people in abuse situations, which of course, like I've said before, really with how all these agendas that are being pushed are set up, they're only going to give people under 18 rights to leave abuse, or they could also give child molesters rights to be with the kids. So they're going to start saying that the kids have rights because they're smarter than people have actually thought they were. But then they're going to throw in something that helps child molesters and be like, and since the kids have really more of a mental capacity that they're given credit for at like 10 or something, they should be able to sleep with child molesters. That's what they're going to try to say. Once they finally do push laws that could help people under 18 who are in bad situations, but then they're going to try to like, the people who make the laws are going to try to put in something that they find useful. Because people just aren't going to leave kids alone ever, really, because child abuse is an agenda, so they can create a world of messed up, confused people who are going to go along with anything, with anything that people running everything tell them. So, like, basically, they'll go along with any agenda or whatever. And, okay, wait, where was I? Oh, yeah, so since the U.S. doesn't have many shelters for people under 18, of course, a lot of the ones that are for people under 18 that aren't for, like, foster kids are probably going to have some mess with them. And like I should say and probably said before, anywhere there's kids, there's child molesters, so that should already be a known fact anyway. And so then the last one ran away from, or were last misplaced by CPS. So sometimes CPS will quote unquote lose kids and forget where they placed them. Although they try to keep that stuff a secret usually, because it's commonly the foster parent's job to report the kid missing. But if they didn't have a foster parent, CPS will just like keep quiet about it. And I already have a video where I talk about how they can just delete people's files after something goes wrong or the kid dies as if nothing ever happened. Like there's this one kid whose foster sibling, they were like a baby, they drowned, and nobody had even knew that they were in the baby pool thing, and CPS just deleted their files. So then there's ran away from CPS, which the thumbnail is going to be about this. So like I probably already said, a lot of people have to run away from CPS just like they have to try to run away from other parts of the Cash for Kids system. Although running away from CPS is honestly less risky than trying to run away from something like a TTI or a mental health system or juvenile justice placement. Because with any of those, you're going to be labeled as a fugitive. And there's going to probably be alerts out about you and telling people to bring you back. And then with the TTI thing, those are commonly in the middle of nowhere, so you're at risk of just dying unless you can find a way to contact somebody and get them to come pick you up, which is really hard unless you know somebody who really cares, because like I said, the only reason that any of this stuff is able to go on is because people really don't care, and most people, especially in America, think that everything is a conspiracy theory, and anybody who's coming out saying that these things have happened to them are schizophrenic and they're lying and all that mess, so nobody does anything about Jack. But anyway, commonly when you run away from CPS, they won't report you missing because they don't really want to take the blame anyway. But if they do, still, once you're 15 plus, the police don't care, and if you're in CPS custody, they really don't care enough to look for you, or and they don't want to spend the money to look for you. So people can get away from them a little bit easier, to be honest. Although one thing that I can say is that if the people think that the kid is running away to their parent, the first place that the police are going to check is the parent's house or the relative's house, because they want to keep the kid that they're trafficking and abusing away from the relatives, which is why people have to sneak to get phones to talk to their parents, especially the ones who are kidnapped from their parents for no reason, or even if there was a reason or not good enough reason the kid would want to talk to their parents, so they'll sneak to talk to them. But then when the parent actually was really abusive, they put the kid back in the parent's custody. So stuff like this is done on purpose, especially with the court systems, because I've also talked about before how I only ever see dads get custody of their kids when they're a child molester. But anywho, the kid will run away and then they'll have to lay low till 18 and then try to get their vital records. Or they'll end up being stuck homeless, which doesn't really make a difference because when you're in CPS custody, they kick you out at 18 and you end up homeless and addicted to drugs anyway, because a lot of these people have been addicted to drugs since they were like 8, especially depending on where they live. So, yeah. And honestly, if you know what you're doing, or if you can get to a safe enough area, especially an area with like a lot of homeless help stuff that's not risky, where they like give out canned goods and tents and stuff, you'll honestly be okay. It's really not as scary and terrifying and dangerous as people want to make it seem. The reason why people try to tell kids stuff like that is because people want to see, well, some people want to see other people in bad situations. So they don't want people under 18 getting out of their abuse situations. Because honestly, this, and by this I mean my current situation, is way, if this is even visible, this is honestly 100 times better than being ran through the different parts of the Cash for Kids system. It's better than other parts of my previous situation. And it's really peaceful. I mean, of course, it's going to be really depressing because, for one, the loneliness, which you probably had in your previous situation, depending on what it was. Because the thing is, I was never really good at talking to people, and then I got to a point in like 2020, 2019, where I was really starting to throw my hands up when it came to quote-unquote relationships anyway. Then, of course, there's isolating situations I was in where I didn't really get to meet anybody. So that'd be situations like the fake schools or the Jim Crow special ed self-confined placement. So, I mean, I was pretty much already alone before, so it doesn't really make much of a difference. But this is really, I mean, it's peaceful. But, of course, it's going to be stressful. Like, I mean, anything in life is going to be stressful at times. So, it's pretty much whatever. But, yeah, so that's everything.